This episode's brought to you by Affordable Drill Towers. Founded in 2016 by our good friend Steve Sanguidoce, a retired Houston, Texas firefighter, the Affordable Drill Tower was designed and built with functionality and versatility in mind for any training ground. As a standalone training tower or an add-on to an existing burn building or Connex setup, the Affordable Drill Tower packs a massive punch at an affordable price tag. With over 50 towers across the country, from Massachusetts to California, Montana to Texas, professionally engineered, NFPA and ISO compliant, the Affordable Drill Towers brings the versatility to your training ground. From Main Street USA, the small town fire company in their back parking lot, to the training grounds of the largest metropolitan fire academy, the Affordable Drill Tower fits the bill for price and functionality. Check them out at affordabledrilltowers.com. And two things I like to talk about also when talking about our friends over at Affordable Drill Towers. One, their customized training program. They have the ability to bring some of the best talent from across the country to your home turf after the install of the Affordable Drill Tower. Designing a customized training program for you and your department, Steve will facilitate some of the biggest and brightest names of the American Fire Service to come in and work with you and your department. And secondly, and I think most important, is Steve's belief in need over greed. The Affordable Drill Tower company gives back to not-for-profits that support organizations in the American Fire Service. Organizations such as the Joey D Foundation, which is near and dear to Steve Sanguidoce's heart, as well as many other not-for-profits that he takes a part of. He takes great pride in providing funding for organizations that push this job forward. So check them out, Steve and Dennis over at Affordable Drill Towers. Send them an email at info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Check them out on social media, and their YouTube page is kicking butt with great information, training nuggets, and information about their towers. So check them out, Affordable Drill Towers, and let them know Jeremy over at National Fire Radio sent you. This episode's brought to you by Ridgeway Leatherworks. Ridgeway Leatherworks is a firefighter-owned and operated business, as well as a family-run business, and that's what I love about it. Rob and his family are passionate about their customer service and the quality product and craftsmanship they put out for the emergency services. Rob's been on the show. We've been to his business. We've seen them in action. I've even tried to hand paint radio straps. I promise you, it is not as easy as what the final outcome looks like. The product is so good and so clean and crisp, and yet, man, it takes that steady hand. Rob's become a near and dear friend of our podcast, and you hear that over and over when we talk about our sponsors, that they're friends, supporters, and that's what this networking community is all about, is supporting one another. Ridgeway Leatherworks, Rob Meyer, crushing it. Quality and craftsmanship is number one. Customer service is right there with it. From custom radio straps, universal radio holsters, chin straps, flashlight holders, anti-sway straps, and locker tags made out of leather, there's plenty of opportunity along the way when you deal with Ridgeway Leatherworks. So check them out at ridgewayleatherworks.com. Find them on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And tell Rob you heard about him on the National Fire Radio platform, and give him a little plug and tell him keep up the good work. We need to support our firefighter-owned businesses, and especially family-run businesses, where his two daughters and his wife help out day in and day out along with his other employees. So again, Ridgeway Leatherworks, check them out at ridgewayleatherworks.com and find them on all your social media channels.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 30 of the Size Up by National Fire Radio. I did not do my what's up intro because it sounds stupid, but I also feel like welcome back sounds stupid because I'm going to get this intro down. Everybody that listens every Tuesday, I appreciate you on your Tuesdays spending them with me, or whatever day you're really listening to this. And I'm going to get an intro, I promise. If anyone has suggestions, throw it over on the social media channels. I'm sure Jeremy has suggestions for me, and I'm not going to listen to his no matter what. But, you know, I'm super stoked today to have my guest on with me, because he is a very busy man for sure, especially recently with a lot of the things that he's done. And he is a filmmaker, a documentarian, if that's a word. If it's not, I think
that's a word.
You think it's a word to use, jumping? I love it when they jump in. I think documentarian is a word. A avid cyclist, which we're going to spend some time talking about. A supporter of the emergency services community, and an award-winning documentarian. I forgot that, but I want to read a quote before I drop his name here that I found that he said online, kind of about what it is he does, and I think it's a great way to start this. So he says that telling stories that matter is so much more fulfilling than stories that only entertain. My responsibility in the world is to leave it a better place than when I arrived. And if the films I produce can play a role in that, then I've been successful. Conrad Weaver, welcome to the Size Up. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And that quote, I feel like, is what the Size Up is all about.
Mm,
You got to go internal to figure out what it is you're doing to make the world a better place.
yeah, I think that's everyone's responsibility, and some of us realize it, and some of us don't. And I think for me, if I can do that, then I mean, I've always been one who, yeah, I want to make a difference in the world. I want to not to promote me, but to make the world a better place. Because if we all do that, it will become a better place.
I,
Unfortunately, we're not in the world that wants to do that for most of us.
I feel like people get scared of that though, because they feel
Mm.
like their little things aren't going to make the world a better place, right? Like you need
Yeah,
some grand noir.
right. We don't have to be Richard Branson or any other billionaire that's out there to make a difference, because we can make a difference here.
Yeah.
Right where I'm at. I live in a small town. I live in Emmitsburg, Maryland. If you're in the fire service, you know where that's at. You've heard of that. It's a small town, but I can make a difference here. It's the things it's the small things that matter. It's the small things that make the big difference. And I think each one of us can have a part in that. Right where we're at.
Yeah, and people look to me and they're like, "Oh my God, it's you're doing all these amazing things," or kind of like you making films, or running the not for
Mm,
profit, or having this podcast. And just the other day, Tracy and I were at doing our BJ's run for the week. We kept it
mm.
under our $200 limit, which is a big deal when you
That's
go to
hard to
BJ's.
do.
It is very hard. Two, we we had $200 BJ's limit, $100 Target limit, but that Target limit thing got lost a long time ago. But we're in the parking lot, right? And we just finished loading up the car, and I just hear like, "Sir, excuse me, sir," and I'm like looking around, thinking, someone's talking to someone else, and it's an elderly woman talking to me. And I look over and
Mm,
I was like, "Hey, what's up?" And she's like, "Can you help me just lift this case of whatever beverage she had into her car?" She's like, "I got it in the cart. I just can't do this."
mm,
Sure. And I walk over and I throw it in her cart for her. And I'm like, "Hey, and I'll take your cart back," because the cart return was right near me. And she's like, "Thank you so much. I hope someone does something nice for you today."
mm, mm.
And her saying that was like the highlight of my month almost, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And it's these
And
small
it's
things.
those little things that we don't think about
Yeah.
that really make a difference in someone's life. You just never know what impact that little thing will have. It could start the ball rolling for them that day to have a better day. Maybe they had a sucky day up until then, and here's someone lifted the drinks into the car and took the cart back. And it just lifted their day to a new place.
Yeah.
You
And then
never
they
know.
go home and they tell that story to someone else. And maybe it's one of her grandkids or her neighbor. And they're like, "Man, that guy was really nice to my neighbor or my grandma.
Yeah.
Maybe I can do something else." And it's
And
just,
you know
it's
what? It's interesting that we're talking about this, because this is the very thing that we often thought of when we were doing our coast to coast bike ride. Every morning we would get up, and in most mornings we were in a motel room, and we would, I'm a person of faith. So I would pray, God, lead me to someone today that I can impact. Help us to have the right connection today. That was on our thoughts as we're going to ride 60, 70, 80, sometimes 90 miles, on a bicycle. We wanted to have those touch points with people that would make a difference in their life. And we didn't know what was going to happen. There's days when we didn't meet anybody. And there's days when we had just amazing conversations with people. So,
it's
so you
so
never
great.
know.
Like I would have been praying like, "God, don't let me die today on this bike ride." But we're gonna get into the bike ride for sure. We have to talk about the bike ride because that's gonna take up so much time. But to give the listeners a little bit more about you than just my crappy introduction with the amazing quote that's yours, can you tell
Mm,
everybody some more about yourself and kind of how you got into the place where you're
mm.
talking to me today?
Yeah, so I'm a filmmaker. I kind of fell into this maybe about 15 years ago. Have a degree in psychology. I thought I would be going down that path for many years, and worked I worked at an adolescent program for in a psychiatric hospital right out of college, and but I always had a camera in my hand. I kind of grew up with a camera in my hand, capturing photos, and it wasn't until about 15, maybe almost 20 years ago, I was working for an organization, and we started doing some video work, and they kind of leaned on me to. I kind of had the creative eye, and so I started doing video work, and pretty soon I found myself making documentaries, and storytelling became a passion of mine, and storytelling that mattered. I really focus on films and stories that really make an impact and that make a difference in the world. And so in 2014, I released my first documentary, The Great American Wheat Harvest, still available, still selling on Amazon, which is amazing that people are still watching it. It's a story about the wheat harvesters who work for farmers, and they travel from Texas to Montana, going across the central plains in the U.S. harvesting wheat. And
I
it was
didn't
an
know about that
amazing,
one. I have to
yeah, it
check
was an
that out.
amazing little story that really tells the story that most people don't know about. These people who live in their RVs, they take their families and their dogs and their trucks and their combines, and they travel. And so we made that film, and that led to the next one, which led to the next one, and then my most recent film is PTSD 911, and we can get into that in a minute. But I love telling stories that impact people. And for me, selfishly, the stories that I tell of these people that I meet along the way, I make friends. And so now I have friends literally all over the US, people that I've stayed in their homes, and many have stayed in my home. And it's become an amazing adventure for me to go across the country and even sometimes around the world to tell these stories and to connect with people. And I think that's what motivates me most, is just those human connections that, everybody has a story. Some people's is more compelling and dramatic than others, but everybody has a story to tell. And it's my job to kind of help pull those stories out of people.
Well, it's great too because you said you had that eye for it, and I think that's something that folks like you, the creatives out there, they can see where the story is, and
Mm.
they can pull things out of you. I was really fortunate in my little 45 seconds of fame to work with one of the best commercial directors in the
Mm.
business, who I had no idea who the guy wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt had. I didn't even know his name until afterwards, and someone told me, like, "Do you know who that guy is?" But
Mm.
he was able to pull so much out of me, and kind of get me to tell my story that I didn't even know was a story. And it
Mhm.
sounds like, that's your passion too. And again, something like wheat farmers. No, no,
Yeah, right.
wheat, right? But I didn't know that they traveled or they did things. And now I'm interested to watch that because, again, I want to hear that story. I want to see how you tell it.
Yeah, and it's a challenge sometimes to when you find a story, you find someone that has a compelling story, and to set up lights and the cameras, and to get them to tell their story, and especially stories like my last film, PTSD 911. So first responders that are struggling with PTSD, it's a very personal story, and sometimes it's a very hard challenge to get them to pull that you pull that
Yeah.
story out of them. And I feel it's my honor and my responsibility to treat that with dignity and respect, and to be able to build those relationships with people. And that's really what it comes down to, is just building those relationships and building trust. The wheat farmers, when I first showed up with a camera out in Kansas, they were like, who are you? Some guy from Hollywood? I was like, look,
No, Maryland.
yeah, I was born and raised on a dairy farm. I milked cows in the morning when I was young. So yeah, I've had shit on my boots. And when I said that, they were like, "Oh, you get us."
You know what
And
it's
it
about.
just built that relationship immediately, that trust. I wasn't some city slicker from Hollywood that's gonna, exploit their story, but I was really going to be interested in their story in a genuine way. And that's what made a difference, I think, for that film, especially.
And that trust too, and especially with PTSD 911,
Mhm.
people trusted you with their stories.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know from knowing you now, from being on your podcast, you were looking for folks for a long time.
Yeah.
Looking for the person that could develop that relationship with you, and for that sharing end of it too, because not
Yeah.
many people want to share that end of their story. And we
Yeah.
happen to I knew someone that you had already had set up for the film,
Mhm.
Maddie, prior to that. But finding those people in that relationship is got to be huge, right?
Yeah, it is. And having them to say yes, and then for them to trust, like in Maddie's situation, I went and stayed with them. I lived in their home for for days at a time, and that allowed them to see me, the real me, and then allowed them to put their guard down and to say, hey, you know what, this is really happening. We captured an episode of Maddie when he was he had a thing going on, and it wasn't pretty, and he was really rattled. And I said, hey Maddie, would you mind if I grab the camera? He goes, do whatever you got to do, man. And we were able to capture this amazing thing that happened that was really traumatic for him. And that's the opening scene in the film. And but if it weren't for that time I spent there and building that relationship, I wouldn't have had the privilege to do that.
Well, even just asking too, you now telling me and telling the audience, I asked, can I grab the camera for this? Because we
Mhm.
don't ever get to see the back end of these
Right.
things. I mean, occasionally you do,
Yeah.
if you're fortunate to know someone like you, and you and I have talked about these, but I think that's a big end too for listeners to understand. And I'm all about Ted Lasso, and I'm all about the Emmys now because I want to see how everybody does. And I love Shrinking, and I'm mad. I don't know if you watch Shrinking.
No, I haven't seen that.
I
So.
can't believe Harrison Ford did not get nominated. I can't believe I'm not. Anyway, we're not going to get into the Emmys, but I happen to be going through like all the different categories, and I saw that it's like there's a category for like semi-scripted reality TV,
Mhm.
and I'm like, semi-scripted reality TV, like it's not even reality TV.
Right.
Why can't they? That doesn't seem like the right way to go. But that's not what you're doing. You're doing, I guess, reality documentaries or
Yeah, it's the real thing. It's it's
yeah.
it's nothing staged. It's nothing, I was there when, he had a panic attack basically, and we captured that, the raw stuff. And I was there on scene when, we were on the rescue unit, and we were going to the scene of an accident. And it was the real thing. It wasn't a Hollywood set we were on. It was a real thing. And he had to crawl in this car to help someone. And we were able to capture that footage, and to be able to do those kind of things in a real way, in a genuine way, and to use that to tell his story was powerful.
And then his
And
story too, his willingness to share his
yeah,
story, because
yeah,
Maddie is the type of person that is he is the true helper of the helpers. I think is a
absolutely.
good way to put it, right? Because he's helping the people he works for, the people that are asking him to respond,
Yep,
and he wants to help the rest of us,
yep,
still while dealing with his own
yep,
struggles. I don't know if struggles is the right word, but
yep.
dealing with what he's dealing with. And so to see him be able to do that is just unreal.
Yeah, and for him to be willing to then go to some of the dark places in his life that he went through, and the decisions that he made, that were not healthy and not good, and be able to share that in order to help someone else.
Yeah.
For that next person who's watching this saying, oh, Maddie, he went there, but he then asked for help and was willing to, humble himself and say, hey, yeah, I'm screwed up. I need help. And if he can do that, then maybe I can do that. And there's maybe hope for me. And that's really the powerful thing about someone being willing to tell their story. It can make an impact in someone else's life. And I've already had people tell me, yeah, this film has saved my life. And that for me is, I mean, that's why
Why you
that's
did it.
why I
Yeah.
do this. Yeah, that's why I do these things. In fact, we had a screening in here in Baltimore, and it was an event, and we had people from all over the country here. And there was a retired police officer from New York City that came, tough old guy. And after the screening, he came up to me, had tears in his eyes, and he goes, thanks for this film. He said, you made me realize that I need to see a therapist. And there's like, okay,
And
go
I
look.
think too, this is what, and I was going to follow with this, but you just kind of made my point for me, is with the medium that you're using with the film, anyone can watch that film. And whether they thought they needed help, they didn't think they needed help, they were just looking for an answer, whatever it is, they can watch that and take something away from it to
Mhm.
know that they're not alone.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that's a huge, as much as in the emergency services world, we have the brotherhood and the
mm,
sisterhood and all these things, we still have so many people who feel that that they're alone in it.
They're alone. Yeah.
It's hard to say why, and I don't think it's something, again, you and I talked a little off screen before, directly related to the job, that end of it. But there's a little part of it for sure. But you have this medium now, they can watch this film on their own and just see something, you know?
Yeah. And I had someone tell me at an event, well, we were talking about the film, and he was like, I'm not going to come see your film because I'm carrying my own PTSD. Why do I need to come watch someone else's?
Yep.
You know, it tells me he's not ready. He's not ready to deal with his own stuff. And the reason that you need to come see this is because you will see that you're not alone. There are others who have been there and done that and are going through that even now. And perhaps you'll see a spark of something that may resonate with you, saying, you know what, maybe I can try that. Maybe yoga's not my thing, but maybe this other thing is. And maybe if I do that, maybe I could get to a better place. And that's what my hope is, that no matter where you're at, if you're the crusty old firefighter that thinks, you know, just rub some dirt on it, I don't need this. Yeah, you probably do. You need to come see it, and it may stir something in you. And I've had people.
You can always learn something, right?
You can always learn something.
You should continually be learning it, and that's where this is. You know, I didn't know I was sleep deprived until I started hearing people talk about sleep deprivation and what it did for you. And literally, I was kind of like, F you, I'm not effing sleep deprived. It's like, oh wait, maybe I am.
Give me another coffee, right?
Give me another cup of coffee. Like, fuck you, I drink 7 cups of coffee a day. I'm not sleep deprived. Like, I'm good. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that bright light that comes on at 3 a.m. That I feel great when that happens. Now I'm like, bright light, please don't be so bright. But those are the things that, again, your medium is able to get out there to folks, and it's one of those things that I think too, for a film, especially at a film that you can watch on your own, you know, you could always stop it, you know, but you have to start. And I know some of the scenes in your film will definitely be triggers for some folks.
Sure.
But again, you can stop that. You have that control to fast forward, where if you're in a group setting or you're in a class, it's a lot harder to just get up and walk out because you don't want to feel bad. And I know there's folks that have sat through some programs that they were like, that was the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my life, for so many reasons. So again, you have this different medium for folks, and it's just amazing.
Yeah. You know, and just, you know, full disclosure, the film isn't quite publicly available yet for individuals. It will be October 28th.
Okay.
That is our goal. That's National First Responder Day. And our goal is to release it on Amazon that day for the general public. And right now it's available for first responder groups, for events. We're having events all over the country. In fact, our bike tour was a part of delivering the film across the country from coast to coast, and we were able to do that, and had screenings, you know, from Astoria, Oregon to Ocean City, Maryland. And
full disclosure, Conrad has invited me to several of these screenings, and I've yet to be able to attend, and I feel very badly about that. So he's not a bad dude. I'm just, you know, I'm not dodging him either, because I haven't been able to attend any of these.
Yeah. Well, we haven't been in New Jersey yet, so
yeah, I can go to other states. That's not my excuse, man. But you know, New Jersey's a great place. I know some theaters, so if we can put something together, maybe we'll
have to work on that. Yeah, we are doing events around the country even this fall. I'm doing a lot of traveling in the next few months, and really coast to coast again. I mean, we have a small tour in South Carolina. We're going to be out west in California and Nevada and some of the places.
I was going to say, more bikes. You should go from Maine. What is it, Maine to Florida, like to Key West or whatever? Like, you know, that's
actually on my bucket list. My first bucket list item was to go coast to coast, and I've done that now. And I've actually been thinking about, you know, there's a highway that goes along the coast all the way from Maine to Florida. So
see, that would get you in New Jersey, and you'd be good to go. Like, but then I'd feel bad, because then I'm like, man, I got to go out and ride with these guys, and then I got to put miles on, and like,
hey, if two old guys like us can do it, you know, anybody can do it. So,
all right, Lance Armstrong, we've been talking about this enough, and like, I just had to throw that in there, because for the folks who aren't watching on YouTube, let's say, or you know, didn't look at Conrad's picture that I have up for the episode today, because you're in your car, you know, you don't strike me as the endurance athlete that's going to be like, ride my bike coast to coast. Like, and I'm not, there's no hate, no anything. Like, you know, it just was one of those things that when you posted it up that you were doing it, I'm like, oh, this should be interesting. So What spurred that along? Not just to promote the movie, but personally,
Yeah, great. Well, it's been something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I'm kind of a weekend warrior cyclist. I have a road bike that I would get out maybe a half a dozen times a year, in the past and ride. I think the most I've ever ridden in one day up until our training was like 50 miles. But that was rare. That was like, the average is maybe 13 to 20 miles. I'd get out and ride.
And for the folks
And
too who don't know Emmitsburg, Maryland, and may not even want to think about this, it's not necessarily the Rockies, but there are some mountains and some
there are some
hills in
hills.
Maryland. So
Yes.
for Conrad to go out for a 50-mile bike ride, he was doing some again, not the Tour de France, not the Alps, but there's climbs out there.
Yeah, it's not the nice flat level ground like in South Jersey. I have a friend who lives down in
There's
Vineland.
very slight inclines by where I live.
I have a friend who lives in Vineland, and he's like an avid cyclist. And I'm like, yeah, come to Maryland. I'll show you what hills are like.
You could get some speed in Vineland on your bike. Trust you me, man. When I go into Burlington County, New Jersey, I am pedaling like crazy because it is just a flat shot. And then like, a little slight incline.
Yeah. So back to your question about what inspired this, during COVID, like all of us, we were kind of locked in the house. And so I started watching YouTube, and I found this YouTuber by the name of Ryan Van Duzer. And he has ridden across the country 3 times. He's done the Great Divide Trail, which is down through the Rocky Mountains from Canada to Mexico. He has done the Maine to Florida ride. He's done a bunch of crazy things like that. He doesn't even own a car. He just rides his bicycle everywhere. And so he literally inspired this. And it was because of him that I said, you know what? I'm not getting any younger. Now's the time to do it. And by the way, there are firehouses all across the country. There are first responders all across the country in every community. Let's ride across the country, stop at firehouses, maybe stay at firehouses, connect with the first responder community, and bring the film to these communities. And so I recruited my friend John. He's retired from the government. I said, hey, John, do you want to go on a bike ride? He goes, sure. Where are we going? And I said, well, how about Oregon to Maryland? And he stops for a second and he goes, okay, I'm in. And it was that quick. And
Nice.
and so we started training, and we're fortunate to get some sponsors on board to help cover the expenses. And Lighthouse Health and Wellness came on as our primary sponsor. Priority Bicycles came on as our bike sponsor and gave us a couple of amazing bicycles. And we did it. We started in Astoria, Oregon, on the coast there in the Pacific Ocean, and over 65 days rode all the way to Ocean City, Maryland. And it was an amazing adventure. Everything I thought it would be, and then some.
Had some other stuff on the side.
We had really sucky days, literally sucking air, going over the Rockies. But to your point, the Rockies are actually easier than the East Coast mountains because they're higher, but they're broad. So they're easier to come up. It's
a slower incline, I guess.
Slower incline,
more
gradual incline. I think our longest climb was 15 miles, and it was up to about 9,600 feet across the Continental Divide. And but there was 3 of us. They had a guy that joined us that day. He was also riding across the country, and there was 3 of us. We pedaled up. Now we did have to keep our heads on a swivel because we were told that there were grizzly bears at the pass on top.
Oh. It's the last thing I would think about in riding my bike across the country is that a grizzly bear is going to kill me on this bike ride.
And there were these signs along the road, these mobile signs that they put up, digital signs that said, "Do not stop to look at the bears." And we're like, but what do? We're on bicycles going 6 miles an hour.
Like the bear's going to look back at you.
So, of course, it's kind of the standing joke, but all I had to do is ride faster than my buddy,
Pretty much it, yeah. I'm faster than you.
Right. But we didn't see any bears, unfortunately, because we would have loved to see one, but we didn't. But actually,
so the guy you met along the way, though, was that planned, or did you just happen?
No, every year there's people who cycle across the country, and there's a common path that a lot of people go on. We were on part of that route, and he was on the climb. In fact, we had stopped at a ranger station and we're talking to some people, and he pedaled by and kind of waved, and then we caught up to him about halfway up the climb, and we had stopped for lunch at this lodge, and he was there, and we started talking, and he was like, "You mind if I you tag along for a day? And so we rode up the rest of the way. In fact, we ended up inviting him. He was this tent camping, and we had the privilege of having a motel room. So we found a hotel with 3 beds in the room, and we said, "Hey, you can stay with us tonight." And so,
oh, dude, see that again? That's at like Appalachian Trail. Like I just had a friend do the Appalachian Trail over a time period, and he had stories like that on social media of people helping him and him helping other people, right? It's that goes back to what we just said. It's the little things, even though that's a really big thing.
This episode's brought to you by the Affordable Standpipe Prop. Let's break it down real quick. Steve and the crew at Affordable Drill Towers is doing it again. They've created this fully custom and fabricated standpipe prop to support the fire service. I'm telling you right now, this is a game-changing piece of training equipment. And I want to hop into it real quick. It is designed with a 4-inch manifold of high-strength galvanized Schedule 10 pipe. The cart and manifold are powder-coated red for a durable finish, meaning it's not just a talking piece. It's not something you tuck away on the shelf. This is a training prop that can be wheeled into the classroom and then brought out onto the training ground. And so let's talk about that. In the classroom, there's nothing better than having a hands-on prop in front of the students, in front of the fire companies that are there to learn about standpipe and FDC connections. Having that prop in the classroom allows for a great instructional lecture. And then from there, take the standpipe theory and translate it to the training grounds. You could wheel the cart out that's on casters, you wheel it out into the parking lot, and that same training prop that you just used hands-on in the classroom can now be used hands-on on the training ground by pumping into it and flowing out of it. It offers such versatility in its approach. It has a 2.5-inch Siamese connection, 7 2.5-inch outlets, 6 of which are standpipe valves, has a water motor gong, sprinkler head with a control valve, and a system pressure gauge. You can also upgrade and put 3 of the most common field-adjustable PRVs. I'm telling you right now, this is a game-changing training prop that needs to be in every fire company or training department across the country. Reach out to Steve and the crew, info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Ask for a demo, ask for information, or check them out on social media and YouTube. There's plenty of content out there that shows you exactly what the affordable standpipe prop can do for you. This episode's brought to you by Taylor's Tins. Taylor and his crew at Taylor's Tins have been manufacturing aluminum helmet fronts since 2017. With over 200,000 tins in the market, they are a leader in the helmet front space. Custom design, one-offs to department orders, they can turn them around within 24 to 48 hours. Customer service is what they pride themselves on, and they provide nothing but top-shelf product and service to their customers. Check them out at taylorstins.com and check out their full line of product offering. They've always been a very strong supporter since day one with the National Fire Radio podcast and platform, and Taylor and his crew have become dear friends of ours, and we appreciate the support. And at checkout, for a little extra bonus, use coupon code NFR Sent Me. That's NFR Sent Me for a discount on your order. Exclusions do apply. Anyway, check out taylorstins.com for the latest and greatest offerings from Taylor and his crew. And in the words of Taylor, stop burning up leather.
Yeah, it was cool because he was like, yeah, I've been in tents, the whole time and sleeping in a real bed, and was actually pretty cool. So
Shower,
so
a nice shower,
yeah, real shower,
really
yeah. Yeah, and that's where we had a support crew that had an RV, and the Lighthouse Health and Wellness, they had an RV. In fact, 3 weeks before we left, Joe Ramirez from Lighthouse calls me, and he was like, "Hey, Conrad, I did a thing." It's like, "What'd you do?" It's like, "I bought an RV. I'm coming with you." We're like, "Oh, okay." Yeah. So it was wonderful to have them along because we had some moments where we needed them. We were in the middle of Wyoming. There was a massive storm coming, thunder, lightning, all wind, all this stuff, and we were out in the middle of literally nowhere. And all we had to do is pick up the phone and call, and 30 minutes later, they were there picking us up. And about 10 minutes after that, the storm hit with a vengeance, and we would have been like, yeah, it'd have been bad.
It would have been bad for sure. I was going to ask you too, like if you had a support crew or what you had out there, because I know like that man doing it all by himself with tents type of a thing.
Yeah, he was alone. And then that next day that we were riding with him, we met another couple at the restaurant. We were eating breakfast, and they were on a tandem bike. These people were in their 60s, riding coast to coast on a tandem bike. So husband and wife,
Yeah.
together. I was like, I don't think that would have worked with me and my wife. We love each other, but I don't know.
Yeah,
if
no,
we
I
could.
know it wouldn't work with me and my wife. We ride together, and that would not work.
Yeah, but they were fast. I mean, here you have two motors on a bike,
Yeah.
basically, and we couldn't keep up with them. They were so fast, and they ended up in Washington D.C. like 3 weeks before we did.
Wow.
So yeah, they were fast.
They were doing a lot of
So
training.
they
Let's
were,
go with the training on that one. The two motors,
yeah.
and they trained a lot
Yep,
prior to
right.
that.
Yep, absolutely. But yeah, it was just, the people that we met along the route was amazing. We stopped in this one little town for lunch at kind of a gas station place. It was the only thing that was there. And got to talking to the lady that was running the place and this old guy sitting at the counter. Ended up, they were both EMTs, first responders. And so they were just sharing stories, stories of their little community and the things, the calls that they've been on and the things that they're doing. And they really appreciated what we were doing. And so we were able to share the love and just to connect with people like that was just an amazing experience. Another experience we had, we rolled into Pomeroy, Washington, small little town, Eastern Washington, on the Snake River, and rolled up to the firehouse, the all volunteer firehouse. The chief happened to be there. He was like, "What do you need?" We're like a place to sleep, and he was like, "I got a room in the back. You can stay there."
Nice.
And just like that, we had a free place to sleep, and so we had support like that along the way. And another firehouse in Walla Walla, Washington, we rolled in just unannounced, just rolled in, and they were like, "What are you guys doing for dinner?" We're like, "Don't have any plans." He said, "We've been smoking a brisket." I was like, "What time's dinner?"
Yeah.
And so we joined them for dinner that night. And so it was just that kind of thing we had over and over again all across the country. It was amazing.
How many firehouses did you stay in?
We stayed at, I think, a total, it wasn't as many as we had hoped for. I think we actually slept in 4 firehouses along the way. One of them was in Des Moines, and that one was the one that was, it was fully staffed, operational, but it was in the suburbs. So they had one call that night. So we were kind of fortunate. They were like, "Yeah, you're lucky you weren't downtown because they'd have had 10 calls that night, And so, yeah, right. So we were able to experience a little bit of what you guys experienced in the firehouse.
We actually, early on in my career, we had a French firefighter and his girlfriend stay in our firehouse for like 2 nights that were doing, I really wish I knew where they were going or how they were riding bikes for sure.
Mhm.
And they spent their second night was with my shift, and they were really nice. They ate with us. It was crazy. Like you get when I showed up in the morning, he's like, giving me a cup of coffee type thing or like doing housework with us. And I'm like, "Wait, you're just touristing." He's like, "No, we have to do our part." Like, and he's like cleaning him and his
Mhm.
girlfriend are cleaning the
Mhm.
toilet. I'm like, "No, it's my job. Like, you're taking my job." Unfortunately, one of the reasons I remember that is unfortunately, that following morning, we had a line of duty death
Mhm.
that we responded to in the next town over. And what I was, obviously an emotional wreck afterwards, and I sort of
Mhm.
lost it in a
Mhm.
very New Jersey way in front of him and his girlfriend.
Mhm.
Came back, and after I was able to get myself back together, they were like the first 2 people that I was like, "I'm really sorry for the way that you just saw me behave."
Mhm.
But he understood because he was a firefighter,
Sure.
and she understood. But I was like, "No, you have to let me apologize to you because that was
Mhm. Mhm.
unprofessional, just inappropriate. It was bad. Like, I
Mhm.
was a mess." But having that kind of as one of those things that I remember, and having them there, it's got to be the same for the houses you stayed in. That those
Mhm.
folks, guys that were there, are going to be like, "Yeah, this crazy dude in his documentary on a bike
Yeah.
shit."
Yeah, it was, we'd roll into some place and they were just like, "You're doing what?" And
Exactly.
why?
You're crazy.
And as soon as we'd say, "Yeah, we're writing for first responders," they're like, "Oh, well, come on in. Let's talk."
On a t-shirt.
It
Even a
just
t-shirt.
kind of, broke that barrier immediately because sometimes, cyclists have a reputation for being rude and obnoxious. And, we were
Especially
not that. In fact, we were
triathletes.
like waving to everybody, on the road, In fact, the one day we were riding this trail and we kept counting all the cyclists that passed us that wouldn't even acknowledge us. They wouldn't even lift a finger or,
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
give us a nod. It's like, okay, we don't want to be those guys. We want to wave to everybody. In fact, we had to ride an interstate in Oregon, and we were riding on the interstate, which is actually pretty safe because they have a wide shoulder.
It's not East Coast interstates.
Right. Yeah. uh, and we had trucks honking for us. Like cheering us on, we're on the big climb up the hill, it was so cool. Then we had other trucks honking for us for other reasons,
I can imagine you probably pissed a few people off along the way.
Like, yeah, we did.
You don't make an omelet without breaking eggs. So that's how it goes on the road. Yeah. I'm sure. So you just said you were on a trail, like an off-road trail, or?
Yeah, we found a few in Oregon. They had amazing trails that was like right along the Columbia River. We kind of followed the Columbia River from Portland all the way to Lewiston, Idaho. And Oregon has an amazing trail system, and these are paved bike trails.
Okay, yeah,
which is pretty amazing. Now we rode that until we couldn't. Then the trail went like way off into the woods and up over the hills, and we're like, forget that. We're riding the interstate, And
it's gotta be safer on the interstate,
right?
In the middle of nowhere.
Because we had, if you're on a single track, and if you're a cyclist, you know what a single track is. It's just like a little path, that you're on in the woods. Well, we had bikes with bags on them and our supplies, and they were heavy, and a single track just wasn't going to work, especially if you're doing switchbacks up a mountain. So it was like, yeah, we're not doing that. We're crazy, but not quite that crazy. And so we're crazy enough to ride the interstate.
and you were carrying all your gear, right?
We were carrying our gear, most of our gear. Now we had tents and sleeping bags that we left in the RV. Those were kind of the backup if we needed them. And most of the time, our support crew was within a couple of hours of us. They didn't really stay with us, but they were always kind of hovering in the vicinity, so that if we needed help. Now, during the mountains in Montana into Wyoming, going through Yellowstone, they had a family thing they had to go to back in California, so they had to duck out for a week. So I give Joe a hard time because, like, during the hardest part of our ride in Yellowstone, you left us.
Some support crew, Joe. Way to go.
Some support, yeah, right. No, but it was, and there we had to carry our tents and our sleeping bag and stuff like that. But we ended up not having to use them, and thank God, because we had 2 days of 40-degree rain in Yellowstone, and it was miserable. And we ended up finding the last hotel room that they said was a deluxe queen room. It was more like a non-deluxe single bed, barely enough room for one person, let alone two guys with bicycles,
They took the picture from up here, I think.
I did. Yeah, right? I did. I slept on the floor, and John got the bed that night, but it was pretty miserable. But we were thankful for a roof over our heads because it was pouring down rain outside, cold, rain, bears, things like that, we didn't have to worry about. So we were nice and dry.
I'm going to be kind of a douchebag here, but like, it sounds like you missed your chance to make another documentary. Like, I'm just throwing that out there, like a couple camera crews floating around, and this would be a documentary, right?
Well, we actually did capture quite a bit of our trip. We had GoPros with us.
Okay.
And so I'm
sitting on the footage. It's okay.
Sitting on the footage. I'm probably going to be developing like a short YouTube series on it. Yeah. With that footage. Now I'll have to do a lot of like narrating because we didn't actually turn the camera on us and talk. Sometimes
you're riding a bike.
Because we're riding a bike. Yeah.
I know there's people out there that can do that, but not everyone. But I feel like too that's all. You're telling a whole nother story here. That to me is extremely interesting, because now I'm like, well, I retire in 5 years, and I've always talked about doing these like endurance challenges, and most of them involved. There was one that I'm still looking at that involves a bike, but like most involved running. But I think I'd rather do it on a bike and do something like that, Maine to Florida, just for this experience of it all.
Yeah, and this for me was, I'm not an athlete. I'm not a world-class athlete like my friend Ryan Van Duzer, the YouTuber that we follow. We're actually friends now. And he does ultra marathons. He does 100-mile marathons, crazy stuff. But anyway, and he told us, he said, look, the first 2 weeks on your ride are going to train you. And we're like, yeah, you can say that. You run 100 miles, with barely a breath. And but he was right. The first 2 weeks trained us. We had training ahead of time. We spent a couple months riding, mostly training the backside.
So that was a question that came up when I was telling someone I was interviewing you today about this. They're like, ask him about his ass, get personal from there.
That I had problems, and there's this amazing amazing cream called butt butter that we
I'm
used
familiar
every
with that
day.
one.
Yeah,
Butt butter.
it was very helpful, but I still had some issues. And yeah, there was days that was painful. You know, I learned too that the type of seat you have is so important. Um, we had these seats that we bought that had a little bit of cushion in them, and I kind of discovered it's probably not the right kind of seat to have. You want a more firmer seat.
Mhm.
It just works better. And actually, the last 3 or 4 days, we actually came by home here, and I swapped out seats for the last couple of days because I was in some pain, and that actually helped to have a firmer seat,
The
which
seat is
sounds,
key on your bike.
opposite. It sounds upside down, but it's actually true.
Mine is 100% uncomfortable, like 100% hard. Like
Mhm,
going on my road bike is just like you don't want to be in it, but it's
yeah.
because, excuse me, and also too, like to me, you don't want your weight, and you've ridden a lot further than I have, but I don't want my weight in the seat so much as I kind
Mhm,
of want it up and forward,
mhm.
right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
so when people talk about that, like, what do those little seats and this, that, like, I'm barely on it. I'm a little,
Yeah.
so I don't have a lot going on.
Riding 60, average of 61 miles a day, you're going to sit a lot.
Yeah.
Now, post ride, I'm dealing with basically what's tennis elbow with my
Oh,
arm
from being kind of
from
like,
being out like this,
yeah, yeah.
and so I'm really dealing with that on my right elbow right here. It's actually a pain right here, that spot right there. And so I'm kind of working through that, but it never affected me on the ride. And this is, in the 2 weeks that we've been home now, that's been an issue. And someone told me the other day, well, you know what that means? You
You
just got to
miss
go
your
out and
bike.
ride again.
Yeah, you got to ride again. That's exactly was going to be my answer. Like, you should be sitting right now. You should be on this
Right.
podcast riding
Yeah,
and just
right.
talking to me right now. That's what your
Yeah.
body's telling you. You have to listen to your
Yeah.
body,
I
Conrad.
know.
Like, you're
I
clearly
know.
not. It's bad
I
fitness.
gotta break the news to my wife though. Okay, how do I do that?
Yeah, but if you ride in the house, it'll just be you spinning on the bike all the
But you
time.
know what? I tried that. I actually have a thing that I bought and I mount the bike on it, and I hate it.
Yeah, I hate
It
that
just,
trainer too. I
yeah,
hated
I
every
just
minute
hate
of that
it.
trainer. Yep.
I mean, I work the elliptical. We have an elliptical here. I use that, but yeah, I mean, I did get out and ride on Sunday. I rode with my wife. We who doesn't like to ride on the road, so we just kind of rode around town here. But yeah, it was, and I have this band thing now that I put on my arm, which
Yep.
puts pressure on that nerve,
Yeah, the
which really
tennis elbow
helps.
band. Yep.
Yeah,
People do it
yeah,
for their knee, for their arm.
yep, yeah, which really helps. So I'm trying to avoid going to the doctor. My wife is like, "You should probably go see the doctor." I was like,
Give it a little bit longer.
yeah,
You're still functioning, right? Like,
right,
I
yeah,
wouldn't
I'm fine.
rush into the doctor. And again too, I love riding. I love riding with my wife, but she's had just recently had a knee replacement,
Mhm.
so she doesn't want to get back out there yet. And I
E-bike.
understand. What's that?
Have to get an e-bike.
Yeah, get her on the e-bike. No, it doesn't count. Like, it doesn't count because if we're not out there arguing together, like when I go out for a ride by myself, it's kind of boring because like I don't have her yelling at me that like I'm either going too fast or she doesn't want to do this climb or shut up.
Mhm.
Like I like that. That's like a drive for me to be like,
Yeah,
just keep climbing. Like when I'm
yeah.
by myself,
I have to tell you this. My buddy John that came with me, we actually we got along really well. We had one day when we had kind of a thing,
it
out of
happens. I'm
65
sure.
days, that was pretty good. And it was a time where I was not in the best mood that day. I don't know what was going on in my head, but I was just not having fun. And we had trouble. We had a lot of trouble with broken spokes because we were carrying weight, and John weighs a little more than I do, and he had more trouble than I did at first until we shifted some of his stuff onto my bike, so it kind of even out the load a little bit. And so, we'd hit these cracks in the road or on the side of the road that it'd bump the bike, and then sometimes you'd break a spoke, and so that was a pain. And so the one day we kind of had I wasn't feeling the best, and he was up ahead and he was hitting these bumps, and I was like, John, just get behind me because I'm not hitting the bumps. Get behind me. And he was like, he kind of reacted to it and he just pedaled off just on his own. I
Done
was like,
listening to you.
okay, I pissed him off, but that was the only time we talked about it. That later that day, I was like, hey, I'm sorry for pissing you off. It's like, oh, but that was the only time we really had a moment where we're like, yeah, we don't like each other much that day.
Listen,
But
you
we
did
knew that
better
was
than
going to
most
happen.
would. You did better
Right.
than most
Yeah.
would. My wife and I can't make it to the end of the block fight without arguing at least once or twice. Different when it's your wife, I guess,
Yeah.
and your buddy going cross country. I've never really thought about a broken spoke. I was thinking more of like tires. Like,
Yeah. We didn't have much tire trouble except once. So we had a broken spoke on my bike, and we ended up, this is coming into Nebraska. And so I had to fix the spoke. And so as I was fixing the spoke, I punctured the tube.
Oh, okay.
So we were there working on it and almost had it done. All of a sudden I heard, I was like,
It's the worst sound.
yeah. And so now we had to, replace the tube. So anyway, we were in Nebraska where we had a 2-night rest. So we had a day off, and they had a bike shop in town that was not open the weekend, but it's open on Monday. So Monday morning went to the bike shop, and they actually made a quick repair, and we put us all back on the road. 25 miles later, we were stopping for a bathroom break, and I was in the ditch, and my front tire literally exploded.
Oh.
The tube just blew up, and we had some really heavy duty Schwalbe tires on our bikes, which are like almost puncture proof. So really expensive tires, and it damaged that tire. So we ended up having to call a support crew, had to go back to the bike shop, and they had to replace the tire and replace the tube and all that. But literally, I thought someone was shooting at us.
I was going to say, it was like
that's
a
how
blowout,
loud it
right?
was.
Like,
Yeah. I was just thankful I wasn't on the bike.
Yeah.
But that was the only time we really had like serious tire trouble. But otherwise, it was just, it was spokes.
Been around that once, and like I work in an inner city firehouse, and we fill air in tires is a common. It's actually getting less common, I guess, now with e-scooters, because all these kids have e-scooters and not bikes anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I was early on the job, and it wasn't me, fortunately, but somebody was filling a tire for a kid, and that thing exploded, and everybody was like on the ground, like nobody got hurt, thank God. But it was like, holy, like, all right, I'm gonna go really slow. Like my new one, I'm filling tires, no matter what. Now I'm like, little bit of air, check it. Little bit of air, check it. I don't feel like.
Yeah, this was just so random. I guess the tube had been pinched or something, and just that rest when I got off the bike and was, literally off the bike, and it was just sitting there and on its own just blew up. And so
can't believe though that you went cross country and only had that like minor tire issue.
I'm telling you, the Schwalbe tires, I mean, here's a commercial for the German made Schwalbe tires. They're $85 a piece, but they are worth the investment. If you're doing a coast to coast ride, that's the only tire I would use for this, because in some parts of the country, they have these things called goat heads out in Nebraska and Wyoming. This little plant that has this little devil looking spiny thing,
spikes, I guess.
And so back during Vietnam, we used to put these terrible things in the forest that Viet Cong would step on them.
Okay,
yeah. So it impaled their feet. That's what it looked like, but tiny. And they kill tires, and we had a lot of people tell us, "Oh, watch coming through Nebraska. Make sure you don't get hit by don't run over a goat head." And we didn't have any problem, because we had these nearly puncture-proof tires. But I think also it had been pretty wet, and so the goat heads, I don't think, had dropped off the plants.
So
I think they had to be dry.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to deal with as many. But
Schwalbe tires, because that's what Mrs. Pip is getting. Because I swear, every other time we go out, I'm on the side of the road.
They're amazing.
An inner tube.
There was a guy that went across Asia and Europe, 15,000 miles, had the Schwalbe tires, never had a flat.
I did like a 70-mile bike tour down the shore, and my last 3 miles I just rode on a flat tire, because I'm like, I'm not changing this. Like I stopped and I knew where I was, and I'm like, I just don't. I'm just fishing, and if I destroy the rim, it means I'm buying another rim. But I'm not. People are like, you should change that. I'm like, shut up. I was like the mean cyclist guy. Like, don't tell me what to do. I'm fine.
Yeah, but I'm a fan of the Schwalbe tires, but just make sure that the tube you put in is the right size, because the first bike shop that put our tubes in had oversized tubes, and they folded them up inside there. Not a good idea.
I was going to say, it's not a good idea. I can't.
Not a good idea. So we were a week into our ride, and John started getting a low tire, and we're like, "What's the deal?" So we pumped it up, and we were in Missoula, Montana. No, it was in Lewiston, Idaho. And we went to a bike shop, and the guy was like, "Who put these tires in here? These tubes in here?" Because all 4 of our tires had oversized tubes, and they had folded them in to get them in there, and we're like, you got to be kidding me.
Those guys are like, we'll never see these guys again.
Exactly.
Literally, like, get rid of this size fits no one, and these guys will never be back.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about it on a podcast.
Yeah, right. It's like, we're never going back to that bike shop.
Wait till you're in the YouTube short, buddy.
Yeah.
Conrad's coming back with a vengeance. You and your 2 big tires. It's awesome though. How many states did you go through? Like, just out of
we went through 13 states. So Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland.
I feel like if you went Maine to Florida, you'd go through more states almost. Like you wouldn't.
Probably.
It'd be right around there, but it's just crazy.
East Coast, there's more states. In the West,
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah.
bigger. They're a lot
Yeah,
bigger.
no, for sure. Yeah, but it's just one of those things. Like when you talk to people in the Midwest, like and they're like from like I could get to you in Maryland in 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever it is from where I am there. Where when you're in Colorado, you're still in Colorado.
Right.
You're
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Texas, and you could go to the other side of Houston in 2.5 hours, and you're still in Houston. Like
right. You can ride 12 hours in Texas and still be in the state, you know?
Yeah, it's so crazy when you think about that and you think about the country and just like our ability here is not what is everyone else.
But tell you what, if you ever get a chance to go out there to Montana, Wyoming, that the valley south of Missoula, it's called the Bitterroot Valley, and it's where the series Yellowstone is filmed.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In fact, we came by the ranch. We saw the Yellowstone logo and all that stuff. We took a picture of it. But that valley is absolutely stunning. It's one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And we got to, spend 3 days in that valley riding south. And that's the thing about riding a bike across the country. You see things for a long time. You see a mountain and you see it for hours that day. And you get to absorb it and soak it in and think about it. And it's just an amazing experience. And you see, like I say, we saw the country slow.
Yeah.
And
appreciate it so much more because it's
start
just you and it's you and your thoughts in a way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For whatever those thoughts are, whether they're, oh, the seat sucks today, or
they're going to be good, bad, and indifferent the whole time.
Yeah. And for me, most of the time it was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Yeah. I can't believe I get to sit here and see this and experience this and to see the country slow and to see these places that most people don't ever get a chance to see, and especially seeing it as long as we've seen it, sitting in a bike saddle.
And everything too, like in life, it just comes at us so fast, right?
Yeah.
Everything is fast paced. You're on a movie tour, you're making the documentary, you're going here, you're going there. It's just go, 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 go. Yeah. And now, unless you're the husband and wife on the tandem, you're actually going slow enough to really take it in and appreciate.
Yeah. And even now it's helped me since the ride. It's helped me just to, hey, it doesn't matter. We can just rest. We can slow down. We can slow our life down. We don't have to go running everywhere all the time. We can just be, and to learn to be, I think is so important, to be present here now. This is what I'm seeing, what I'm smelling, what I'm experiencing, the thoughts that are going through my head, to be here now and not have to worry about, because what is worry? Worry is about something you can't control in the future. If I can be here present, my life it slows down and becomes better, and I can make better decisions, and I can think more clearly, for the future. And I can say, you know what? Yeah, the future sometimes can be scary to think about, but I'm here now. And it reminds me of my friend Chris Moore, who's a firefighter down in Chesapeake, Virginia. And he had a therapy dog for a while, or a support dog. And this dog was trained to put pressure on him when he sensed that Chris was nervous or was anxious. And he said, what this dog does is it brings me to the present. My anxiety is fear about the future, something I can't necessarily control. But when this dog pressed up against me, oh, okay, I'm here. I'm right now. I'm safe. I'm in a good place. And that's kind of what this bike ride did for me. Was like, okay, I'm on this bike. I have, 65 miles to ride today to my next stop. I'm just going to be. And I don't have a choice. I can't just, flick my finger and be at the next spot. I can't be anxious about it. I'm just going to experience this one pedal stroke at a time. And by the way, we had 1.1 million pedal strokes across the
Oh my
country.
God. So throw this in here after
Fun
my
fact.
epic, my epic, hope for the future and just be. But those are my pedal strokes too, by the way.
Yeah. But that, it taught me so much about just being in the moment.
Yeah, it's so great because we miss that. Life.
Yeah.
It's like Ferris Bueller said, man. If you don't stop and look around for it once in a while, life may pass you by, right?
Yeah.
And it's that thing where you didn't stop; you were moving the whole time.
Yeah.
You were able to absorb that, and I feel like that's so important for so many of us. Because I'm going a mile a minute every day of my life. I keep saying I'm going to slow down, and then I pick up something else that makes me go
Mhm.
even faster. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to complain about it because it's what I like. I say when people ask me all the time, they're like, "How are the boys?" I'm like, they keep me on my toes
Mhm.
because right, I'm keeping up with these two little guys that are doing
Mhm.
8 million things. But it's that you have to be present, and you can get very easily lost in the minutia of it all.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
spinning it back to the film, to PTSD 911, it's really easy for us to, as emergency responders, to just get lost down that path.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes down to being there for each other and sharing these
Mhm.
stories. And I never really thought that about you see so many people with service dogs, and
Mhm.
that's just something they can do that's so simple to
Yeah.
bring that person into the present, right?
Right. And I think that's what we need to work on. Even, me, as I'm looking at this fall tour and traveling a lot and, going from one place to the next, with the film and, starting to work on the new podcast and, filling my schedule. And I've really worked hard now to schedule my time and my days so that I have time to be, my meetings. I have my meetings on Tuesdays. Today's Tuesday. And so that's my meeting day. I try not to have any meetings on any other days just because I want to be able to have time to be. And yesterday, you know, we got some bad news yesterday, and I was able to sit with that yesterday and spend the day because I didn't have anything on my calendar. I was able to deal with that situation, you know, and I was able to be. If I'd had meetings interspersed, it wouldn't have been the same. It'd been more stress. But I've scheduled my days so that Tuesdays I have my meetings. Thursdays I work on my podcast. And so I record my interviews for my podcast on Thursdays, only on Thursdays. And so that allows me, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to work on the business, to work on myself, and in order to be. And I think that's something that I've learned from others that do a similar thing where they schedule their days like that. And I think I'm looking forward to it to see the results of that,
Yeah, see how it's going to affect you
to
because you're
see how
paying
it's going to
attention to
affect.
it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. To
Yep.
see if at the end of the year, if, oh, wow, I've accomplished much more than I could have accomplished because I had that space. I had that white page time, you know? And so I think I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
I'm excited to see what happens with you too, because again, I'm sort of like that. My life is a little not because of the schedule, the work schedule, which we all know is I happen to have one of the good ones out there,
Mhm.
but it's still hard. And even today, I'm trying something different. I'm doing marathon podcasting because my
Mhm.
kids aren't here today, so I'm trying to get a lot done.
Sure.
Because August is a big month for me. I'm going on vacation. The audio engineer is going on vacation. Um, but I can be a little vulnerable here because I always am. But like I worked last night. I worked
Mhm.
24 yesterday. And
Wow.
here I am thinking, like, watch, I'm going to be up all night. And I
Yeah.
have 3 podcasts scheduled today. And I don't want to drink. I mean, I'm drinking coffee because my
Mhm.
second cup now. But like, I don't want to mess up my day. And I don't want to
Mhm.
cancel on you or anybody. But I didn't want to have to do it this way, but I did.
Mhm.
And I was fortunate last night. We got some rest. I wasn't too busy, but it's one of those things that you have to be cognizant, I guess the word is the best, or conscious of what these things can do to you.
Yeah.
And in the past, I wasn't even thinking about anything like
Mhm.
this. And being an older firefighter now, I'm trying to teach the young guys, like, look, you have to be aware that you can't, we used to call it burning the candle at both ends.
Mhm.
And that statement, I think, has long gone away
Yeah.
because I think
Mhm.
everybody just does that in their life.
Mhm.
So it's that just be. And I feel like I'm taking that now as my mantra for a while.
Yeah, you have to be aware of yourself and take care of yourself because if I don't take care of myself now, in the future, I'm not going to be good for anyone,
Exactly.
including myself.
Yep.
And so I've got to work. And I mean, I'm 58 years old. I'm just learning these things now. I wish I'd have learned this, 30 years ago.
Well,
And to
you
think
did 30
what
years ago, man.
where
You
would
just
I
didn't learn
be?
it this way. You were learning other things, right?
Right.
And then like all those things lead up because I talk that way about myself too, where I'm like, why didn't I know this 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, well, if I knew it 20 years ago, then I probably wouldn't be here today, just
You're
like
right.
you
You're
are
right.
today because you
Yep.
didn't know it. And that knowledge that you're 58 years old and you still have a lot to learn.
Absolutely.
My dad is 85 and he tells me things and I'm like, well, you just learned that. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you just learned that at 85. Good for you.
Yeah. And if we're not learning,
yeah, that's
shame on us, right?
that it is. Well, we're getting up to our hour mark here that I like to keep these things at. Not that I promised you I'd let you get back to all your other work today. But, before we get into the Size Up 10, let everybody know where they can find you, the documentaries, all your stuff that's out there, how they can come to the next couple screenings. Let's put that out too, because maybe I can make one finally. I promise.
Sure.
I don't promise.
Sure. If you just go to ptsd911.com, you'll find all the information about the films and all that kind of stuff. And if you just Google my name, Conrad Weaver, it'll show up in one way or the other. And if you want to see my films that I've produced, the other films I've produced, just go to Amazon and search for my name and you'll find all of them. There's like 4 films on there that I produced over the past 10 years.
And I wanted to spend some time today too talking about more film production stuff because it just interests me knowing the little end of what I do here on the podcast and seeing things out there. So we're gonna have to have a part 2. And I say this with so many of my guests because it's just so interesting how like you're on Amazon, not Netflix, not Apple TV, and all these different mediums that we're dealing with now, or not A&E. You know what I mean? Like how this all works and how you get to these places and stuff. And we're gonna have to have a part 2 here to talk more.
I'd love to.
But the bike ride was more fun to talk about. Talk about your next adventure. If you wait 5 years, then maybe I'll join you on one.
Okay.
And I'll be 50. Well, that makes you feel better too at that time.
We'll see what my adventure will be in 5 years. We'll have to think
maybe I don't want to join you.
One thing on my bucket list, I'll tell you this. One thing on my bucket list has been to hike to base camp in Everest.
No, so, that's up there for me. I've thought about that one. Like I feel like I have to do some of the smaller mountains first.
Sure, right. I mean, that's going up to like I think 19,000 feet is that base camp. So yeah,
it's really high. Like
it's really high. Yeah,
really high. The highest I've been in Colorado was like 12.5 at Copper or Winter Park when I was snowboarding out there, and it was so cool. But I just remember feeling like death in me. Like I drank too much beer.
I summited a mountain, and I was going to do a 14er in Colorado when I lived out there, but we did Hallett Peak, which is 12,007. So starting at down at Bear Lake, which is at about 9,500 feet elevation. So
it's crazy too, because you answered one of my questions here on the Size Up 10 without even knowing it was coming at you. So like I'm still asking it because maybe you'll give me another one. But like, that bucket list is an important thing. And I feel like for the Size Up your bucket list, if you don't have a bucket list, make one up. You know what I mean? And make them attainable. It's just like a goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
One's going to ride a bike across the country without training before that. So, you can make a goal to ride your bike across the country, but you need to do some other stuff before that.
Yep.
The same with bucket lists. There's a few things on mine that I'll probably never do, maybe like that Everest one, but it's there. You never know if you get a chance.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah. So you're asking my bucket list. So
well, we're not. Well, hold on. That's question 8. We got to go in order here. Because if I ever edit this, I need the order so I know where they're coming at me. I am the worst at editing, Conrad. Like I'm getting better at it. I'm devoting time each week to editing clips to put out on social media.
Gotcha. It's time consuming.
It is, and here's the dumbass that I am. Just the filing system, like where I filed the clips, like. Where did I put these? Oh no, I separated them. Which one did I post? Oh, like now I'm like, I got to start again. I'm such a so much. Anyway, all right. The Size Up 10 with Conrad Weaver here. Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Nice. Night out or night in?
Night in.
A good book or a good movie?
Book.
Cross country road trip. Who's your co-pilot?
Oh, my wife.
I thought you were going to say your cycling buddy there for a second. So I'm like, let's see how this goes. Do you make your bed every day except when you're on a bike ride?
Yes, I do.
$1 million right now that we don't have on the Size Up by National Fire Radio, or go back to 18 with a redo.
Oh my. Well, I wouldn't want to redo some of the things that I've done, so I'd take the $1 million now and do good with it.
I like it. Oh, and do good with it. So you just had to throw that one in there. Such a do-gooder, man. I think I know this answer too, but highways or back roads?
Oh, back roads, always.
Bucket list place to visit. You can't say Everest Base Camp.
No, yeah, that's a great one. There's so many places. Switzerland is on my is high on my list. Going back to last summer, my wife and I went to Lisbon, Portugal.
Oh,
Ever get a chance to go, make it a priority because it is amazing. We're going to actually live there. That's our goal.
nice.
Is to move there when my wife can retire. We're going to go live there for 6 months, just to do 6 months in Europe, but Lisbon is going to be our home base.
I was supposed to, so I got to go. My brother-in-law was in the Navy. I got to go on a Tiger cruise with him. We ended up going from Jacksonville, Florida to Virginia Beach on an aircraft carrier, which was very cool.
Fun.
But the initial trip, we were going to go from Portugal to Virginia Beach.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I'm going to Portugal a couple days before. My wife was like, wait, what about? I'm like, you didn't get invited on, you're not on the Tiger cruise. I'm going to check out Portugal and we can go back.
Yeah, Portugal is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, I loved
awesome.
it.
I like that one. All right, 2 more questions here. Football or football?
Oh, I don't really watch either, but I would probably, if I'd have a choice, I would probably watch football.
Okay, that's good. It's an odd question.
I know a lot less about that than American football, but I think it's more interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
That they have their clock goes up.
Clock goes up. Yeah, that pisses me off.
Which is really weird.
Crazy. Like American sports fans, that's one of their biggest complaints. But it never stops, and then you don't know how much time is left.
Yeah, exactly.
There's all these little things again going,
which I think is interesting. Which makes it an interesting thing. But there are some grass fairies out there, which I'm like, really? He barely got hit,
Because it's part of the game. Like
it's part of the game, right?
If you watch soccer, we're talking about soccer here for the folks that didn't catch the football reference. It is part of the game, flopping, just like fighting is part of the game in hockey. That flop. So it used to be different too, going back to my old school days of when you didn't know how much time was left and only the ref knew. That flop may have actually assisted your team in winning. Now you see the time, I don't like that so much. It's at the end.
But if you'd have asked me about football or hockey, I'd hands down hockey. So
yeah, but see, that's a very easy question.
Yeah,
for most people, right? Like totally easy question. All right, last one here. Last one. Best advice you could give to your younger self.
Wow. Don't wait on taking adventures. Just go do it.
Nice. I like that one. Little Nike reference there too. If Conrad always needs sponsors for his movies, just threw out, just do it. So, it could be a good sponsorship opportunity there, but I do.
Well, it didn't say what Richard Branson says. He says, screw it, just do it.
Yeah, but see, you can't steal his line. You
I know, right?
That's twice in the podcast now, so you definitely can't. And Nike's not going to pick you up. Nike will not pick you up if you run with that line.
Right.
Conrad, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been a great conversation. I'm glad we got to reconnect.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be on the show. No
worries, man. Everybody out there listening or watching here, go check out PTSD 911. The documentary will be out on Amazon on October 28th. That's 2 days before my birthday, for those of you keeping track of a birthday present as well. He's going to have a whole bunch of tours coming up, a whole bunch of showings. You did miss him riding his bike across the country, or maybe you saw him, or maybe he stopped in your firehouse. So if he did, let us know on the social media channels and reach out to us for the Size Up by National Fire Radio, episode 30. This has been Pip, and we'll catch you next time.